Good morning, Kahal Kadosh. Beruchim Abaim to everybody. Today, the 11th day of Tevet, the 15th day of December. Today's class, graciously sponsored by Manuel Salem, honoring his wife, Yael, and newborn baby girl, Tamar. May Hashem bless all of them Amen. With beracha, naslaha, livelihood, health, shalom bayit, and v'chol mileh devetav. Additionally, today's class dedicated for the continuous recovery of our dear friends, David Ben Pauline, Mr. David Towel, Hurdle, Hashem should give him refuah shelema and erichut yamim, as well as the one dear member also, Mr. Charlie Saka, Yeshaya Ben Lora, Hashem give him refuah shelema among the Holim of Am Israel. Amen. Also today's class graciously dedicated by Ishaq and Sheena Mehila and Sylvia Sheena in honor of their son Dan and wife Jen. That may Hashem bless them with Zera Haya Bekayama, with children to be able to build a beautiful family among Am Israel. Amen. Amen. Since many of our generous sponsors are online, watching live or listening to this class, I need to give a statement on behalf of Hatzalah of South Florida. As the Kahal Kadosh knows, yesterday night was a mega event for Hatzalah South Florida, which we are going to have our own in a few weeks here at the synagogue as well, to commemorate the launching of the ambulances. The Kahal Kadosh remembers that literally 10 days before the unfortunate calamity in Surfside, the governor signed and approved the bill to be able for Hatzalah South Florida to do transport of patients, something that in 13 years did not happen for many different reasons, which is not the time nor the place to discuss. Behazdei Hashem, this was approved literally 10 days prior to this calamity. Although it took us 3 months to start getting ambulances, but no one can deny it, as the mayor of Miami-Dade County said last night, that Hatzalah of South Florida with the Israeli rescue group and Magen David Adom probably were on the front line for weeks after this unfortunate day back in June 2021. So it was a magnificent Kiddush Hashem. Hatzalah today currently serves 12 neighborhoods, from Miami Beach till Lauderdale Hill, which is in Fort Lauderdale. The new addition to Hatzalah announced last night was the expansion into the Boca Raton area. Obviously, the idea is to have the EMTs, the responders, the dispatchers, obviously with full rabbinical backing to establish a chapter and to guide them to with all the legal protocols. So Baruch Hashem, it was a magnificent event of Kiddush Hashem. So Hatzalah asked me to personally thank not only everyone that came last night, but everyone that so generously participated, from the 6 ambulance from our synagogue, as well as community members from Brooklyn, Deal, and New York City. 2.5 ambulances were sponsored, which that means close to $900,000. And this was a big zechut for everybody, irrelevant of the amount. It's just the willingness to be a partner in such a holy project. So on behalf of Hatzalah South Florida, we say to the Kahal Kadosh, Hazaku Baruch, and Be'ezat Hashem, any day, once the ambulances are approved, the ambulances are brand new, but then you need to set up equipment, get a license for its approval, and Be'ezat Hashem will be rolling as soon as it becomes available. I'm sure that Salah will inform. And definitely, and the reason why I devoted the first few moments to speak about this is not only to express the gratitude from Hatzalah to every one of the Kahal, and I see people from all over. You have Hatzalah in Montreal, you have Hatzalah in Brooklyn, you have Hatzalah in Queens, you have Hatzalah in Lille, Long Branch, whatever area of the Northeast, you definitely have Hatzalah, which is something, a Kiddush Hashem. But I want you to know, above anything else, is that we need to know one thing. that when we see a responder of Hatzalah, in a sense, their life, so to speak, has become a different type of life. As we heard last night, when you're a Hatzalah responder, there is no Shabbat, right? There is no Yom Tov. You can be about to make the Kiddush, you're about to eat the matzah in the Seder of Pesach, and suddenly what happened? You gotta run, right? The special sound that the radio dispatcher makes. And this is Mesirut Nefesh. This is, in a way, sacrificing their lives for the life of the Kahal. But like in synagogues and any other area of life, we have those that support and we have those that do, and then it becomes a beautiful joint community effort, which I guarantee you that this type of response from all the congregations, obviously, but from ours especially, that we have Hatzalah in our DNA, so to speak, it brings a great zechut. It brings a great merit and a great source of blessing and protection for everyone. I hope you never need to call Hatzalah. But if you have to call Hatzalah, let it be to deliver a baby. I think that's a nice call to make, right? And if God forbid, things are more critical, be aware that you have Malachim coming to your rescue to take care of the matter to the best of their ability. With that being said, we're going to switch the topic today. Today's Gemara from Masechet Baba Messiah. We understand that learning Torah, it's a requirement in the life of every one of us. You cannot be a person with Torah knowledge or Irat Shamayim or Mitot Tovot unless the person learns Torah. In other words, a person can be a nice person. The question is, which parameters of being nice do you measure yourself? Do you use the parameters of the external world, or you use the parameters of the Torah? If we use the parameters of the Torah, being nice, you know what it means? Basically, be a malach almost. Don't react, don't scream, don't yell, don't use vulgarity, think before you speak. That's the concept of being nice from the Torah. So the Gemara is going to give us today perhaps a formula. And interesting that we're quoting the Gemara, because the Gemara begins and it says, Tanu Rabbanan, our rabbis learned, Ha'oskim b'mikra, middah ve'eno middah. It says there are people who the only thing they learn is Chumash. Chumash, the weekly parasha. They don't cross that topic. They take the book, they read the commentaries. Interesting, I know the parasha, or Nevi'im, or Ketubim, the prophets, or the chronicles. Tehillim, Megillah, all that is beautiful. But the Gemara seems to imply that is good, but that's not the ultimate level of learning. And the Gemara is going to say, Mishnah, but when you learn Mishnayot, which is the next level, Torah shevichtav, the written Torah. Then we have Torah shevi'al peh, the oral law. And we discussed this topic a while back, that they supplement each other. You cannot have only the written Torah, because the written Torah, honestly speaking, without the ingredients of the oral Torah, half of the verses are impossible to understand. Or the opposite. If you're going to concentrate only on the oral Torah and not on the written Torah, you're missing the gravy, you're missing the salt, you're missing the seasoning. So it says, the Mishnah, now that you learn Mishnah, which our holy rabbis tell us that learning Mishnayot is good for the Neshama. Why? Because Mishnah and Neshama are the same letters. Mishnah, Neshama. So there is a campaign now, started in Israel. I saw this a few days ago, Divine Providence. Like you have the Daf Yomi, now you have Mishnah Yomi. You learn every day, I think, 2 Mishnayot.
School?
What?
School?
No, it's not in the schools. It's for the businessmen. For the businessmen. Because the boys in school, depends on the school they go, they learn Humash, Mishnah, Gemara, based on the age. But this is for every one of us. You learn, you register, they even give you the material to review daily, and in 6 years, you finish the 60 volumes of Mishnah. Like Daf Yomi takes 7.5 years, Mishnah at a slow pace. 2 Mishnayot a day shouldn't be more than 10 to 15 minutes. It's an unbelievable thing. It means if you learn a chapter a day, in 1 year probably, or 1.5 years, you're done. But what happens? The Mishnah, let's explain. The Mishnah and the Gemara, they support each other. The Mishnah is the basic foundation. Let's say this prayer book is gray. Where do you learn that this color is gray? That is the Gemara. The Gemara, it's like WD-40 for your brain. Mishnah is a blank statement, short. Bet Shammai says yes, Bet Hillel says no, or the opposite. Rabban Shimon and Gamliel. For example, let's take the first Mishnah since we talk about Mishnayot. Shema in the evening. First question of the Mishnah. How early can you say Shema in the evening? Obviously, there are many different opinions, but the way to fulfill the mitzvah properly from the Torah, we have Seta Kochavim. But there are debates in the Mishnah. Until what time can you say Shema at night? One opinion says till 11 o'clock. Other opinion says till 12:30. Other opinion says till 5 o'clock in the morning. Now, I drop this package on your table. Now, Gemara says, okay, Rabbi, thank you, but I need to dissect this. Okay, let's analyze. Why Hacham Aleph, let's call you Aleph. Hacham Aleph says till 11 o'clock. And why Hacham Bet says till midnight? And why Hacham X says till dawn? So now the Gemara's mission is to do research to find out how did you arrive to that conclusion. And interesting enough, you'll be surprised how many times the Gemara quotes same sources. For example, I'll tell you one and we'll move on. The Pasuk says in the Kriyat Shema, Beshochbecha ubkumecha. What does that mean? When you lay down and when you get up. From here we learn that Shema needs to be recited twice a day. But now, ask Bet Shammai, yeah, but according to this Pasuk, what's the meaning of the word Beshochbecha? When you lay down. So according to Bet Shammai, you must lay down to say the Shema. And in the morning, the Pasuk says, Ubkumecha. What does it mean?
When you're getting up.
You have to stand up. So according to Bet Shammai, the night Shema is when you lay down. And the Shaharit Shema is when you are standing, like the Amidah. Bet Hillel says, Rohi, stand shoya. That's not, the Torah is not telling you the physical position of the body when it comes to say Shema. The Torah, right, that's what the conclusion of the Gemara is. The Torah is telling me that during the night time, which is usually when people go to sleep, you have to say Shema. And when usually people get up in the morning, you have to say Shema. The question is, at what time a Jewish person wakes up in the morning? Maybe you like to wake up at 11 o'clock in the morning.
You missed it.
Hazaku Baruch. But why did you miss it? Because according to the Gemara, Bnei Israel are called Bnei Melachim. What's the meaning of Bnei Melachim? Sons of kings. We are royalty. We are the chosen nation. We have the Torah. We have HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have the Tzaddikim. So we are considered the firstborn child of the Jewish people. The Gemara says kings usually wake up in the first 3 hours of the day, between 6 to 9 or 6:30 to 9:30. From here, the Gemara learns you have 3 hours to say Shema. And it's true. What time is, let's say, sunrise? 7 o'clock? Till what time is Kriyat Shema? 9:40. You use a Halachic calendar, so to speak. How do we arrive? And that's why when you hear me every night and Shabbat night say, please remember to repeat Shema after 6:10, or please make sure to say Shema before 9 o'clock. You know why do I say this?
You always say that.
You know why?
Yeah.
That's a halachic requirement. The halacha says that a synagogue that prays before Shema, before Seta Kochavim, it's imperative for the rabbi to remind the kahal to say in a timely manner. Why? Because we took a shortcut. When you do the early mincha and arvit, it's called taking a shortcut on the prayer, which is based on Talmudic law, the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, which discusses the time of Plaga Mincha. Plaga Mincha, it's an hour and a quarter, give or take, before sunset. That's why we do Arvit, but you did not fulfill the mitzvah of saying Shema on time, because when it comes to Shema, there are two mitzvot: to say the Shema and to say the Shema on a timely manner. So if you said it too early, you have to repeat it again. And if you said it too late, you miss one of the two mitzvot. And that's why Rabbi Yosef says clearly that synagogues that say the Shema before Seta Kochavim, it's imperative for the rabbi or the gabbai to remind the Kahal Kadosh. He says, that's not the ideal, he says. He says the ideal will be do mincha, finish by sunset, give a 20 to 30 minutes Torah class, and then continue. And you know what's going to happen if we activate that?
People are going to go home.
Hazako Baruch. I'm happy that somebody else said it. Many people will not stay. So in order to help the Sipur to at least do something, we do this leniency or allowance, I should say, and that's the source of an early Shabbat in the summer. The early Shabbat that people do in the summer, it's based on this. Now, where did we learn all this? From the Gemara. And that's exactly what the Gemara writes, and it says that Gemara, which is the understanding and the reasoning and the opinions of each one of the opinions stated in the Mishnah, there is no ultimate benefit for the concept of a person acquiring knowledge like understanding the reasons behind halachic rulings and rules and regulations. Because at the end of the day, when the Torah tells me, honor your parents, beautiful mitzvah. What? The Torah doesn't tell me how to honor my parents. The Torah says, honor your parents. Remember the Shabbat to sanctify it. What does that mean, remember the Shabbat? Yeah, I have a reminder in my cell phone. Today is Saturday. Is that what it means, remember the Shabbat to sanctify it? Honor your parents. Okay, don't scream at them. Is that the only parameter of honoring your parents? So how do I know that I cannot sit on my father's chair? How do I know how many things I need to do in order to honor my parents accordingly? Chazaku Baruch. So you go to the Gemara Kiddushin, one of the chapters there discusses, chapter 1, I believe, towards the end, discusses what does it mean to honor a parent. But the Torah doesn't tell you that opening. And that's why the Gemara is saying that Chumash is important, Nevi'im Ketubim is important, Mishnayot is very important, but Gemara, it's a combination of all. Why? Because for those who learn Gemara and the Daf Yomi that yesterday we started Gemara Megillah, you know, many times the Gemara brings sources of different verses in which it forces you to go to the verse and to open the verse and to read the verse and to understand how come that we read this parasha every year of our life and I don't see nothing. And suddenly comes the Gemara and it says, oh, the Pasuk said by Lehorot. For example, I gave this speech the other night in the school. The Pasuk writes, Yehuda, about Yehuda. When Yaakov Avinu became aware of Yosef being alive, what the Pasuk says, that before Yaakov reached Egypt, what did he do? He tells his son, Yehuda, go open for me a yeshiva. And the Pasuk says, Lehorot. Lehorot, there are two ways of writing it. Lehorot means to rule, to teach. Hora'ah. There are two ways of writing it, with double vav or one vav. So the Midrash al-Humah says, the word horot, in this Pasuk, it's written with one vav. Why? Because if you play with the letters, it gives you the word Torah. So Yaakov is saying to us, you're going to move to a city, find out Torah for your child. Because if your children don't have education, how do we promote or how do we guarantee, so to speak, the continuity for the next generation? Even though you say, but look, Rabbi, I survived going through this and going to that. I guarantee you that the school system or the public school system 30, 40 years ago, it was holy place compared to what it is today. Yeah. With drugs, addictions, metal detectors, gun violence, all the things that we hear, this is what's happening. So comes the Gemara and it says, just 1 second, that Gemara, it definitely brings the concept, and the Gemara even goes further from the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, Heve Zahir Batalmud. So it says that be constant in the learning of the Talmud. Sheshagat Talmud Olad Zadon. Today, let's clarify, let's understand the following. We need to understand historically the how do I say this? The void that existed in the Jewish people concerning the learning of Torah. What does it mean? Baruch Hashem today, and this has been going on for almost maybe 1800 to 2000 years, but today is much easier than 50 years ago, that today we have access to any imaginable book of Torah that you can think of, in many languages. And that's a great beracha that we have. But till the time of Rabbeinu Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, even the Mishnayot were only by memory. No, nothing written. Why? Because if it's Torah sheve'al peh, if it's the oral law, how can you write it? But when the Hachamim saw that the problems and challenges and tribulations that were surrounding the Jewish people prior to the Roman Empire, etc., the Galut, Hachamim realized that people literally were forgiving and people were not remembering properly. And that's why many times in the Gemara itself, you will find different opinions that you say, where this is coming from. And then they clarify and it says, no, there is a missing line, or there is a missing word, or he misunderstood what the rabbi tried to say. So when Rabbi Yehuda Nasi saw that the learning of Am Israel was going down the drain because there was no access, what did he decide to do? He received permission to put the Mishnayot into writing.
Rabbi, we're fixing.
1 second.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. I apologize for that. New rules coming from the upper ends that a question should be written and then I'll read them this way. True story, what happened a few days ago. I'm not going to go into it. Put it in writing. Put it in writing. I'm looking at the camera. You need a pen, Habibi?
Do it.
Do it.
I'll ask you after.
Okay. No, maybe it's an important question that many people may have. But I apologize if this doesn't sound as, how do I say, elegant or respectful, but I was asked about this to mention publicly. This way it makes their life easier and make people less upset.
Mm.
And you know what? I see the point as a speaker and as a rabbi. So let's go back. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi put the Mishnayot into writing. Then we have two rabbis, Rabbeinu and Rabbi She. Now, remember, Mishnayot are written in Hebrew. That means that most of the Mishnayot were where? In Israel. That's why you have the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Talmud from Jerusalem. Short, concise, Hebrew, straight to the point. Then we have Talmud Babli, which is the Gemara. That's why certain writings, like Gemara, for example, Zohar, Idra Rabbah, Idra Zuta, they are all written what? In Aramaic. Because Aramaic, for a certain chapter of Jewish history, was the main language of the Jewish people. More than Hebrew. We don't understand how. If you're asking me, I don't know how many people today speak Aramaic. There are a few people that do speak Aramaic, but honestly speaking, it's easier for us to speak Hebrew than to speak Aramaic, right? We don't even know where to start. What Aramaic we know from the Talmud, the Zohar, or the Perashah with Targum, etc. So Rabbeinu and Rabbi She took upon themselves this monumental task of gathering all the manuscripts and all of the opinions and all of the sources, and they put together the Talmud. They put together the Gemara. And it is true. If you go to a normal yeshiva, or you go to a kollel, for example, what is part of the learning besides Halacha? They learn Gemara, because that is the foundation of Halacha. So the transition is Torah, Mishnah, Gemara, Halacha. Because you finish the Gemara, you don't know. So which opinion do I follow? Do I follow Bet Shammai? Do I follow Bet Hillel? Do I follow Rabbi Yehuda? And the Gemara says, if you follow all the strict rulings of Bet Shammai, Bet Hillel, and Rabbi Yehuda, you are wrong. And if you follow all the leniencies of Bet Shammai, Bet Hillel, and Rabbi Yehuda, you are double wrong. That's why Hazaku Baruch. That's why we needed to wait for the arrival of Maran Bet Yosef. Although the Rambam existed before Maran Bet Yosef, and obviously Maran Bet Yosef based the Shulchan Aruch based on the Rambam, the Rif, and the Rosh, which is important to explain one thing. And today is very easy. There is a chart that gives you all the lineages of the Hachamim. So you have the Tanaim, the Emoraim, the Geonim, Saboraim, Rishonim, Aharonim. Rishonim means pre-Inquisition. Rashi, Rambam, Ramban, Rabbeinu Batya, all these holy. Rabbeinu Yosef Karo is 500 years, give or take, after Maimonides. But Maimonides, the great Rambam, known as a Hanesher Gadol, he wrote the Yad HaZakah, covering all the mitzvot of the Torah, the 600 commandments, 613, including the 7 of Hachamim, from the mitzvah number 1 of the Emunah in Hashem, every imaginable mitzvah in the Sefer Torah, all the way till Mashiach's arrival. Beautiful. And it's a very light, easy reading. But came the Shulchan Aruch and also filtered the Maimonides, so to speak, in only doing something called Shulchan Aruch. What's the meaning of the Shulchan Aruch? What's the meaning of the word? Shulchan means table. Aruch means set. So imagine yourself that you come from tefillah and nothing is set up on the tray, on the table. You have to come into the kitchen, knock on the door. Okay, today I'd like to have a bagel, a sendu, sponge cake. Okay, yes, may I help you, sir? How long will it take? Complicated. You want to come in, ready, sit down, eat and leave. So that's what the Maram Bet Yosef did. Maram Bet Yosef filtered the halachot of the Rambam, removing what is not applicable today. Because remember that the Rambam lived 1,000 years after the destruction of Bet HaMikdash number 2. Maram Bet Yosef, give or take 1,500 years. So Galut was unfortunately alive and well. So what did he do? He not removed Chas v'Shalom, but he selected the halachot which are relevant for everyday life, without complications. You don't screen them, right, right. He did not discuss there the laws of Shemitah, Terumah, Yovel, which are mitzvot applicable in Eretz Israel, but mitzvot which are practical for life. That's why they call it volume number 1 of the Shulchan Aruch. It's called Ora Haim, the ways of life. You want to know how to live a life of a Jew? You go to the Shulchan Aruch Ora Haim and you have it. But I will say that for many of us, even to learn the Shulchan Aruch, you have the Shulchan Aruch in the middle, and you have 10 opinions or 10 comments on around. So therefore, you need to go to the books which are practical, direct, halacha, that tells you, this is allowed, this is not allowed, this is to do, this is not to do. You want to know reasons? For that you go to the yeshiva, for that you go to the kollel. That's why the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, written by the great Rabbeinu Shlomo Gansfried, give or take 150 years, exactly this is what he does. He puts the halachot in practicality. Although Rabbeinu Shlomo Gansfried was a great Ashkenazi rabbi, but really in the halacha, there is a small discrepancy between Sephardic and Ashkenazi halacha, and that's why you have the Yalkut Yosef, or you have the Ben Ish Hai. For example, before the Yalkut Yosef was the Ben Ish Hai, which gives also practical halachot more from a Sephardic perspective, and then you have the Yalkut Yosef, which through the years it expanded because life changed. Life changed. Even between the Ben Ish Hai and Hacham Obadiah Yosef, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, there were 100 years difference in life. So do you know how much life, to a certain extent, evolution in a good way, and in the needs of halachic rulings, which were never found in the Shulchan Aruch. If you go to the Shulchan Aruch and you Google search, how do I kasher a microwave? You know what's going to be the answer? Not found.
Because it didn't exist.
Hazak Baruch. Didn't exist back then. So therefore you need to resort to the newer halacha books to give us the idea of how to proceed according to Jewish law. So the question is, who do you follow when you have multiple opinions? Excellent question. I'll give you the best answer available. One answer there is to your question. Aseh lecha Rav. The Mishnah says you must make yourself a rabbi. That's why I quoted before the Gemara that says, imagine yourself that you want to follow all the extreme. Usually, let me preface this with the following. Many times, I shouldn't say usually because it's not true, but many times people like a shortcut. Rabbi, give me the easy way. So this guy may look for the easy way of Bet Shammai, of Bet Hillel, and Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara says that's inappropriate. You can't do rabbi hopping. You can't say, okay, for this topic, I like this rabbi because he's going to say aloud. For that topic, I don't like him because he's going to say no, he's a bit extreme. I'm going to go to another rabbi. Guess what? That doesn't help the person spiritually and intellectually. That causes a convulsion in the mind and in the neshama because you're trying just to take shortcuts all the ways of your life. And that's the answer to your question. That's why the Mishnah clearly says, Aseh lecha Rav. You ask the rabbi, Rabbi, who do I follow? So the rabbi will hear you. Hopefully the rabbi knows you. I will tell you, follow this way, and you are this. But the tradition is a bit different. Okay, it happens all the time. It happens all the time that certain communities have certain minhagim, certain traditions, and as long as they are in concordance to halacha between the parameters of halacha, Hazaku Baruch is not an issue whatsoever. Okay, Rabotai? Very interesting topic. Very interesting topic. Just a 30-second or 1 minute message. I got a busy day ahead of me. We have a conference of rabbis in a few minutes. 40 rabbis coming from Kendall to Jacksonville. Yes. Yeah, they're coming here. Yeah. So in an hour. So I need to set up the room, take care of the organization with the other rabbi coming soon to help us. But I'll tell you 3 short messages from Davar Sheba Kedusha concerning the topic of eating. So we know that serving Hashem is not limited only to the synagogue or when we do a mitzvah. Even when a person is on the street, as we learned yesterday, or a person is in a restaurant, or a person sits down to eat, a person must eat like a Yehudi. Not only kasher, which is obvious, but beracha before, beracha after, but also the Davar Sheba Kedusha says, Lo yadam bal'an begargeran. Yani, don't become a vacuum cleaner when you eat. You got it?
Got it.
Easy. That's how Esav used to eat. Esav didn't believe in leftovers. True story, by the way. It's a pasuk. He was a glutton. He said to Yaakov, what are you going to serve me? I'm going to finish the whole tray. That's the meaning of that pasuk. It says the opposite. Bal tashchit, leftover, it's fine. You save it for, you're going to tell me that in your life you don't eat leftovers? We all eat leftovers.
The Rambam says to leave some food on
One
your plate.
second, that's a whole different story.
If I leave food on my plate, who's going to eat from my plate?
Doesn't matter. The idea is that you exercise self-control on the food.
So
that's the message. Leave a small piece. I do that also. But when I have kibbe, lahmajin, maza, you think I leave a kibbe on the table? I'm mahmir. I make sure to finish. So what do I leave? Something. I understand exactly what you're saying. But basically what Davar Sheba Kedusha says is remember that even when you do your physical actions, something so normal and essential like eating to survive, you are also standing in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. I think the message it is trying to convey is that don't put in your mind, oh, because I'm eating, and eating is something physical, and God is spiritual, so I can eat as I want. It says, Davar Sheba Kedusha, Haz v'shalom, when you eat, you also have to eat like a Ben Adam, like Adam. And it goes even further. And it says, because this brings Hesed and Kedusha. It says, this brings kindness to the person because you're eating in a calm manner, and this brings holiness to the person, and don't imitate the ways of Esav, because the ways of Esav not only that don't bring holiness to the person, but it attracts negative forces of Sitra Ahara. Sitra Ahara, God forbid, means the impurities of the other side. Meaning to say, a person creates energy. That energy can be channeled through holiness or, God forbid, through unholiness. For example, I'll finish with this. I read this a while back. There is something called Ta'anit Hara'abad. Ra'abad, I think was Rabbi Abraham ben David, is commonly known for his commentaries on the Maimonides, on the Rambam. And he writes and it says that before you start eating, sometimes a person senses that the food is calling the person. It never happened to you?
Yeah, of course.
I think it happens to some of us. Okay? So it says, at that moment, he says, pause, hold yourself for 1 minute. You determine when you are going to eat. And he says, that minute of abstention is like you fasted that day.
That's discipline.
It's not so simple.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
Sometimes I try to do that, and I'm looking at the seconds, and they're not moving. I said, maybe my watch is too slow. Try it. Try it. It works. It shows that the person is in control. I'll finish with a story. Can I tell you a short story? Thank you. No, because I said I'm going to finish quick. But I think that this story can enhance what the Ra'avad says. There was this story happened in Europe. I don't know the name of the Hasidic dynasty, but there was a great rabbi that passed away. And he left in his last will, and it says, I am not going to appoint which of my sons will be the one sitting on my chair, so to speak, following with the Hasidic dynasty. I led a special committee of the elders of the congregation to make that decision. Interesting. Okay, the rabbi leaves the world. A bit later, they finish the Shiv'ah, they finish the Shloshim, and they said, okay, who is going to be the next grand rabbi? So they summon all the sons. They showed the sons what the father wrote. They all accepted. So they said, what we're going to do? It says very simple. Every Shabbat, one of the sons will be like the, let's call them in American, in English terms, the scholar in residence. Right? Alternate every week, and at the end of the 5 or 6 weeks, we are going to make a decision of who to appoint to become the grand rabbi. Okay, everybody accepted. Everybody, every Shabbat, they beautiful Divrei Torah, beautiful Chazanut, and the decision was becoming very difficult because everybody's a star on its own merit. So they decided to do the final week, to do a tish. Have you heard of this word?
Yes.
So for the audience, a tish means that Shabbat night dinner, when you finish having dinner at home, you come to the synagogue or you come to the rabbi's house for desserts. And usually they sing a lot of songs, they eat snacks, desserts, the rabbi says a few words of Torah, etc. In the Hasidic world, by the way, the grand rabbi, and I've seen it with my own eyes, when the kahal goes home for the meal, the rabbi goes to learn. And 2 hours later, when the audience comes back to the synagogue, that's when the grand rabbi makes kiddush. But this is only applicable in the Hasidic world. In Israel, it's obvious. In America, for sure. Borough Park, Williamsburg, Monroe, Muncie, Tosh, in your city. Okay, that's where you saw it. That's where I saw it too. So it's a common thing. And at the end, every one of them came to this meal, and every one of them was eating. At the end of the Mosai Shabbat, the eldest of the group says, I made my decision. Okay, the other two rabbis said, on what is based your decision? He says, in the way that the youngest son of the rabbi was eating. He says, what? Everybody was eating good. He says, yes. But if you notice, the youngest son, when he sat down to eat, he sat, and every time he needed to do something about food, let's say he will take a fork, he will take a spoon, okay? He will lift the spoon and he ate. He will take the fork and he will eat. The rest of the brothers, when it came to eating, they did this. So after, they asked him, we saw the way you were eating. Why? He says, I'm an Eved Hashem. I'm a servant of God. Food, it's important, but I'm not going to bow down to the food. The food needs to be elevated to me. It's heavy. And every time I think of that story, I said to myself, I'm going to try. And then Uri, I'm spilling, we're falling, forget about it. Right. But imagine yourself, you know, this is the message of Davar Sheva Kedusha. Eating is important because if a person doesn't eat, the person doesn't nourish well, has v'shalom. But you be in control. My dear friends, I would love to continue talking, but I think that my duty today is telling me, Rabbi, you're running 10 minutes behind. Have a great day, everybody. Baruch Adonai Le'olam.
Amen ואמן.
רבי חנניה בן הקשיא אומר, רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות את ישראל לפיכך, הרבה להם תורה מצוות שנאמר, אדוני חפץ